Alright, so let's get into the time where, after we had several run-ins with Broadway and Duck, how we tried to get at Duck when he came to Dallas. So anyway, how it started was, I was at a show, talk show, you know what I mean? Shout out to Erica Kelly, you know, the network, you know what I mean, gave, Erica Kelly her own show, you know what I mean? Her own talk show, you know what I mean? They said that she was the next Wendy Williams, you know what I mean? So, on her show, cause me and Platt went to go, see a show, she invited us out. So me and Platt in the audience, and, Erica Kelly had Eve on as a guest. And the topic was interracial marriage, cause, Eve is married, to a white man. Has kids with with a white man. And, Erica Kelly is married to a white dude and has kids, so they was talking about, interracial marriage and, raising kids that are biracial, stuff like that. So me and Platt's in the audience, my phone is vibrating. Cause earlier they told everybody to put their phones on silent, cause, they was gonna be recording, you know what I mean? So my phone is vibrating. I look, I see his, Mink calling me. So I text Mink, say, yo, hit me back in like, maybe like an hour or so. So after, Erica Kelly and Eve, and other, black women, that are, married to white men, after they had their show, we backstage. So it's me and Platt, we backstage. I'm congratulating Erica Kelly, on her new show. I'm congratulating Erica Kelly on her new show. Wishing her nothing but success, man, her husband shook hands with him. My phone rings, it's Mink. So I told Erica Kelly, yo, good seeing you, proud of you. Hug, kiss on her cheek. It's like, I'm gonna see you around. Give her husband a pound. Nice meeting you, bro. So me and Platt, we leave, so I pick up the phone. Mink's on the phone, so I'm like, yo, Mink, what up? So Mink, like, hey, Tony, what's good? She was like, yeah, I'm calling to ask, do you still got beef with, Broadway and Duck? So I said to her, I was like, well, I'm gonna be beefing with them niggas till one of us leave the fucking earth, you know what I mean? So it's up and it's, stuck, you know what I mean? I'm like, why, what up? She's like, well, her homegirl, this chick that she know named Nurse K, has been talking to, Duck on the low, like they've been flirting and, just talking back and forth through the DMs and she knowing that I don't like that nigga, she was like, maybe there's a way I can get at him, cause she knew how much I had beef, As, she, didn't like Doug either, you know what I mean? For whatever reason, I don't even know, what was they little spat, but I'm like, alright, cool. So I'm like, well, I said, we're gonna do this, we gotta do this right. I said, I wanna, meet this chick, this Nurse K chick, I wanna see where her head is at, you know what I mean? So she like, alright. So I told her, get at me, you know what I mean? And, we'll chop it up a little more, you know what I mean? Guilt phone her. By what, maybe a day or so go by. May call me with Nurse T, on the phone, group chat, what I mean, FaceTiming. And she talking about how, how she met him and, they've been talking back and forth. But she feels like he's like playing in her face because, she feel, he's saying one thing to her but then telling, Jackie another thing. So I could tell, she felt some kind of way. So I'm like, oh, alright. So I'm basically like, well, I said I don't like the nigga. So I told him how, when we went out to Arkansas the last time, the sheriff or whatever said we couldn't go back out there. So I was like, if we gonna do this, we gotta do this another way, you know what I mean? So I'm like, yo, I said, yo, try to rock the nigga to sleep, get as much information as you can. I'ma work on some things on the back end. Cause, My OG always told me you always not only have a plan B, but you gotta have a plan C and D, you feel me? So, plus it was just something about the Nurse K chick. I just felt like, she had one foot in, one foot out. I ain't feel like she was all in. But me, I'm 10 toes down, off with these niggas' heads. I want both them niggas dead, but word I got, after, we tried to, get at them niggas the last time, I heard, that the sheriff was really on them, so Doug had to go get a job, and Broadway just laid low, you know what I mean? So that's the word I got. So I hit up MHB, I'm like, MHB, I was like, cause he knew about the situation, how we went out to Augustura and couldn't get the shit done, you know what I mean, cause it's sheriff, so I'm like, yo, I was like the only one that could probably get out there and get at these niggas, you know what I mean, it's you, and the sheriff don't know you, we gonna get at this nigga Duck, cause no one know where this Broadway nigga is. I said, I got a line on this nigga, this chick, been talking to him, she feeling some kind of way, she wanna get at this nigga. So I told him, I was like, why is she trying to get at him? I said, you should try to holler at his baby moms. You know what I mean? The white chick or whatever. Because I couldn't do it because she know me from before, and I'm pretty sure she probably feels some kind of way from when we kidnapped her and her son or whatever, you know what I mean? So, MHB like, alright. So, now that MHB woken on the baby moms, he slid in the DM. First, he was unread, you know what I mean, for, a couple days, maybe even a week, and then she replied. So now, MHB working his magic, talking to her little by little. Meanwhile, this Nurse K chick, you know what I mean, gathering information, you know what I mean, here and there, you know what I mean. So, it comes to a point to where, Nurse K drives out there, you know what I mean, to go see Duck, so I'm basically thinking, okay, she could drive out there, get that address, and then we run down on this nigga. So Nurse K, she goes out there, she meets up with Duck. They meet up, they get it in. So when she comes back to me and Mink, we on the phone talking about it, laughing or whatever, but she, was saying, yo, how the house looked messed up and, the lights wasn't working. So I'm like, damn, them niggas doing bad like that. She was like, yeah, she said that she got with him on his lunch break. He's working a regular job now. And how he said that, they had to leave the game alone because, them boys, the little boys was on them, out there in Arkansas. So, and she said his brother's laying low. So I'm like, alright. So boom, I'm thinking we got the address and shit. So, I'm like, so why MHB is still working on the baby moms? Something told me to send someone out there to check that address. So I sent somebody out there, to scope out the address. They said the place looked abandoned. I'm like, what? That's kind of weird that, what the place look abandoned. They're like, yeah. So I get back at, Nurse K. I'm like, yo, they saying that this address ain't right, that it looks abandoned. She was like, yeah, it does look abandoned, but that's where we went. She was like, that's still, So I'm like, damn, so MHB hit me up. You know what I mean? Somewhere down the line, he's like, yeah, he's hearing that, from what the baby mom's saying, that, her baby father, because she don't know that MHB know Duck and that he know me. So he like, yeah, she's saying that her baby father ain't shit. She had to leave him. And, she left him at, that apartment. But he stopped paying the rent, so now he lives with his grandmother. So boom, that's when it clicked in my head. He don't live there. He just took Nurse K there. They do his thing, so that way she wouldn't have his address where he lay his head at. Smart move, I gotta respect it. Alright, so boom. So somewhere down the line, the baby moms is, getting more, comfortable with MHB. She said that he lives with his grandmother and all this shit. So I'm like, okay. So, I had my peoples, that's down there, you know what I mean? That's kind of like working at the courthouses and shit. Look up the addresses. Boom, we get his grandmother address. So me, MHB, we agreed at a certain time to try to, get at this nigga Duck. So when MHB get there, I told him, I said, yo, I heard he lives with his grandmother. I said, don't do nothing to the grandmother, just get at this nigga. You know what I mean? He said, alright, cool, because, MHB don't give a fuck. So MHB, he knocks on the door. He said the grandmother answered. He asked for Howard or whatever. And, she said he's not here. He went away for the weekend. So, MHB said, alright. So he calls me back, and he told me how, Duck ain't there. He went away for the weekend. So I'm sitting, me and Platinum, we sitting in the car, chilling, on the block, watching the block, looking over the block. Platinum's in the passenger seat, I'm in the driver's seat. Platinum's on his phone. I'm talking on the phone with MHB, I'm like, what do you mean not dead? He was like, yeah, the grandmother said he not dead, he went away for the weekend. So I'm like, fuck. So I'm like, damn. I'm like, so I said, well, did she say when she coming back? She said, he don't know. She don't know. So I'm like, damn. So I'm like, well, I don't want you just sitting out there, just waiting out there. I was like, plus I'm pretty sure that town is hot. That sheriff, he be on niggas, so especially like new faces. I said, get about that town, man. You know what I mean? I was like, I'll holler at you. He was like, alright. So the whole time, like, fuck, man. Like, damn, I thought we had, the drop on this nigga. You know what I mean? But the nigga Duck was smart, he took Nurse K to an abandoned house, and then boom, we found where his grandmother was at, but he, wasn't there. I can't believe the luck of this nigga. So all that is running through my head. Next thing you know, Platinum, he's like, yo, he taps me. He's like, yo, he was like, ain't this, your boy right here? So when I look on the phone, it's Duck and Jackie. And I'm like, what the fuck? And they look like they're together and they all live. I'm like, yo, where's that at? I'm like, is that in Arkansas or is that, I'm like, where's that at? And Platinum, like, he don't know. So we looking, but, it's dark. It just looked like, so we trying to figure out where the fuck they at. But I'm like, no, they can't be in Arkansas because the grandmother told MHB that he went away, so he gotta be in Dallas, but we can't recognize the background, so we stayed on the live until it ended. So I'm like, fuck. So I'm like, that nigga's out here somewhere. I was like, we got to try to find this nigga. They never went live for the rest of the night, so alright, cool. Next day, chilling on the block, Jackie. So now we just stalking Jackie's live. They live, boom. They had a restaurant. I'm like, okay, with Kid Kara, Jackie and him. But we liked him. What restaurant is that? We see it's like a Chinese, Japanese restaurant, but we don't know. So we checked a lot of popular restaurant spots that people told us, about. So we going here, we going there, like we chasing these motherfuckers around, right? Can't find these motherfuckers. Meanwhile, the whole time, I'm online with motherfucking MHB. He's telling me how the mom said that he took the grandmother's car out there. I'm like, well, what kind of car is it? So he said it's like a Tahoe or whatever. So we riding around, we looking for Tahoes, and when we did see a Tahoe and we follow it, it's somebody else, it's not them. We like, fuck. So we running around the city chasing every Tahoe we see. We fucking on Jackie's live, and so it was like, fuck. So we like, fuck it, we call it another day. Boom. So we just running around the city trying to get at this nigga, So now, they came up at a spot where they bowling. I'm like, I know where that spot is at, because that's where, motherfucker, Ben had that party at. That's where, that's that spot he used to own. So I'm like, let's roll with. Sure enough, when we pull up there, we see, we see Jackie's car out there. We park up. I'm like, yo, I think this is it. So I was like, I'm sure it's it. So Platinum's strapped and I'm strapped. But, this is like a bowling alley or like a bowling, So we can't do nothing, but we definitely want to get at this nigga, so we walk in there. We see, Jackie and Duck, they bowling, hugging and floating and shit. So, that's when I start slow clapping slow, so they both turn around. They got the shot face. I'm like, well. I was like, it's the great Duck, Howard the Duck, we laughing and shit, me and Platinum. And Jackie just got the shot look in the face, so Jackie went and sat down. Started texting, but I ain't paying her no mind, so Duck's standing there. And I'm looking at him, I'm like, boy, I've been chasing you for like 3 days. I've been looking for you, my nigga. You know what I mean? I said, I even, had someone pay a visit at your grandmother's house, but she said you wasn't there, boy. So he looking at me and shit. You know what I mean? Not backing down, but he know what it is. I'm strapped. Platinum strapped, so it's like whatever. So I looked over at Jackie, you know what I mean? So I'm like, well, Jackie, Wink blew her a kiss, but she ain't saying nothing. She just, texting and being quiet. So I was like, yeah, so I said, I see, you've been, night on the town, you've been doing your thing out here, huh? I'm like, that's what's up. So I said, you don't mind if I throw a couple, rounds with you, right? So, I grabbed one of the bowling balls, threw the bowling ball. The whole time I'm throwing the bowling ball, I'm still talking shit like, yeah, my nigga, it's like, how you been, you know what I mean? I was like, this is forever, this is till one of us leave this earth, my nigga. And he's like, yeah, yeah, whatever. He was like, so, what's up, man? He's like, we gonna do this right here, what we doing? I was like, nah, I ain't gonna kill you right here. I was like, it's way too many witnesses, and it's too easy. So I grabbed another bowling ball. Boom. So, so I'm like, we talking shit. And I'm like, so I stepped back. I said, but first of all, I said, my nigga, what are you wearing? You know what I mean? So that's when I'm laughing Platinum. But I'm like, so I look over to Jackie. I'm like, Jackie, you really fuck with this nigga. You know what I mean? But she ain't saying that. And I'm like, yo, your swag is off, my nigga. I'm like, first of all, like, how, like, are those your shorts or your son's shorts? Like, I'm roasting this nigga. He talking shit. So he talking a little shit back, but, it's like, but I'm like, nah, my nigga. I was like, I'm just fucking with you, but, I was like, yeah, but I'm like, there's no way you gonna leave this motherfucking town, nigga. I was like, when you leave this town, it's gonna be in a fucking body bag, nigga. So we talking shit. Next thing you know, I see some black dude walking up. So I'm like, who the fuck is that? So that's when Jackie says, Detective Barnes, what's good? So that's when I looked at Jackie. I was like, oh, so it's like that. And then Jackie ain't say nothing. So Detective Barnes was there. I'm like, how you doing, detective? He's like, yeah, what's going on, fellas? I was like, any problems over here? So that's when I looked around. Platinum looking around. I was like, no problems here, I was like, just talking to, my boy here, you know what I mean? I ain't seen him in a while. You know what I mean? Laughing shit, but, Duck just ice grilling me. And Duck like, nah, nigga. He was like, nah, talk that. He was like, talk that, motherfucking hot shit you was talking before. That's when I started laughing. I was like, oh, so now you tough because, the motherfucking police is here, huh, nigga? He was like, nigga, I'm tough wherever I go. I'm like, so I'm laughing. I'm like, yeah, I hear you, little nigga. So that's when Detective Barnes stepped up. He was like, you sure there's no problems here? You know what I mean? I was like, nah, there's no problems, detective. I said, matter of fact, me and my boy was just leaving. And so that's when I looked at Doug and I said, this ain't over, right? And he said, not by a long shot, my nigga. I said, yeah, alright. So right when Platinum and me was about to walk off, Detective Barnes said, he's like, leaving is a good idea, but never coming back is an even better one. That's when I looked Detective Barnes up and down and I said, yeah, alright, I hear you, Officer Winslow. And then that's when, I just gave him a nasty look and Duck and Jackie a nasty look and I just walked off. And the whole time me and Platinum, walking away, I'm cursing under my breath like, fuck. You know what I mean? Like, I can't believe the luck of this bitch-ass nigga. So, and then, we couldn't do nothing that night and we couldn't do nothing the whole time Duck was there because now, Detective Barnes is on us. So we just, we had to fall back and, that was just a crazy time of, when Duck came out here to Dallas and we tried to get at him, but, we couldn't but like I said, man, this beef is forever, so, wherever we see each other at, that's where it's gonna go down. It's on sight for life, you dig?